The morning dawned colorless on that forgotten patch of land nestled among the hills. The sky was gray like an old cloth, and the fog crept close to the ground, covering the pastures with a sadness that needed no name. On the porch of the old dark wooden house, a man sat on a crooked bench, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes fixed on nothing. He was in his 40s, but his face bore the marks of someone who had lived twice as long. His hair, once dark, had white strands that appeared like visible scars from sleepless nights. His unkempt beard covered his broad chin, and there was a kind of abandonment in him that was neither laziness nor neglect. It was surrender, the kind of weariness that comes from within, from a place no hand can reach. His name was Teodoro, and for 2 years he had lived like that, lighting the stove at 4 a.m, brewing coffee without sugar, going out to tend to the cattle with the same heavy steps as always, returning to an empty house that still smelled of women's perfume, even though no woman had lived there for a long time. His wife Madalena had left in a different way. Not with suitcases, with flowers, white flowers in a simple wooden coffin, on a late afternoon that Teodoro could never fully remember. They said it was her heart. They said she had always been weak-hearted. They said many things that were meaningless, because no words could bring back her voice calling his name at lunchtime, nor the way she adjusted his pillow before bed, nor the soft laugh when she told some silly story that was only funny because she was the one laughing. Madalena had left, and with her went the last piece of good that Teodoro knew. The children, 2 boys, 8-year-old David and 5-year-old Lucas, remained. They were left without understanding. Lucas still asked about his mother in the first few months, and Teodoro responded with silence because he didn't know what kind of lie would be less cruel than the truth. David, the older one, stopped asking before everyone else. Not because I understood, because I saw in his father's face that the question hurt more than the answer, and so the 3 of them lived. With boiled milk in the morning, bread from the previous week, dirty clothes piled in the corner of the room, and a silence that filled the house like dirty water in a cellar. Teodoro worked, not out of desire, because cattle don't wait for morning. The land doesn't stop because someone died. The barbed wire breaks even when the owner is on his knees, so he got up every day and did what needed to be done. There were nights when he would sit in the rocking chair that Madalena used to breastfeed Lucas and stay there until his whole body ached. He didn't rock, he just sat, his hands on the arms of the chair, in the same places where her hands had polished the wood. And he stayed there, as if by occupying the space she had left, he could for a moment pretend that she was still there. Other nights, he would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and walk around the house in the dark, running his fingers along the walls, the furniture, the dishes in the cupboard she had chosen when they got married. Each object was a memory with sharp edges. The clay pot where she kept sugar, the round bathroom mirror where she tied her hair up before bed, the red mug she used every day, which he never washed, as if washing it would erase the last trace of her lips. The boys understood. Children understand everything, even when they pretend they don't. David, who was the oldest and therefore carried more weight than his age allowed, began to take on small tasks that weren't his. He woke up earlier to help his father feed the animals. He warmed milk for Lucas. He folded blankets. He did adult things with children's hands, and Teodoro saw it and said nothing. Because to say anything would be to acknowledge that his 8-year-old son was trying to fill the void left by an adult woman, and that was a pain that couldn't be put into words. Lucas dealt with it differently. He stayed quiet. Before, he was a boy who chattered nonstop, who asked questions about everything, why the sky is blue, why cows don't sleep with their eyes closed, why the sun is round. After his mother, he stopped asking, as if he had asked the most important question in the world, where did she go? And the answer had been so bad that no other question was worth asking. But caring for 2 small boys while running the farm alone was more than one man could bear without bending over. The meals were always the same: white rice, watery beans, a fried egg, sometimes nothing. The boys went to school in an old pickup truck that coughed up black smoke and returned to a dark house without homework done, without a hot bath, without a hug at the door. The neighbors talked, not to help, to comment. Dona Gertrudis, who lived on the neighboring farm and had an opinion on everything that didn't concern her, had already said more than once to anyone who would listen that Teodoro was abandoning those boys to their fate, that a house without a wife is a house without direction, that it was a disgrace. And the whole town agreed, their mouths full of judgment and their hands empty of help. His sister-in-law, Berenice, Madalena's sister, appeared twice in the first few months. The first time, she brought a pie and stayed for 15 minutes. The second time, she delivered a sermon. She said that Teodoro needed to remarry, that the boys needed a mother, that it was impossible that a man of that size couldn't find anyone. Teodoro listened to everything standing, leaning against the doorframe, and when she finished, he simply said, "Thank you for the visit." And Berenice never appeared again. The months passed like identical days in an endless sequence, and Teodoro became more and more like the old fence in the lower pasture, still standing, but only because no one had the decency to tear it down. It was on a Friday afternoon, One of those afternoons that carries the scent of rain before the rain actually arrives. That she appeared. Teodoro was repairing the corral gate when he heard footsteps on the dirt road. It wasn't the sound of a car, nor of a horse. It was the shuffling footsteps of people on foot, as if whoever was walking had already gone too far. He looked up and saw a thin figure coming down the road, carrying a cloth bag on one shoulder and a small child on the other. She was a young woman. She must have been about 24 or 25, but she looked older because of her thinness and the stooped way her shoulders sat. She wore a faded blouse with tiny flowers, a dark skirt, and worn-out slippers that barely covered her dusty feet. Her long brown hair was tied in a loose bun that escaped in strands framing her face. And her face was pretty, but in a way that didn't draw attention, like a flower that grows in the wrong corner of the garden and nobody stops to look. The child in her lap was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 2 years old. She was sleeping with her head resting on her mother's neck, her little fingers clutching her shirt as if she knew, even in her sleep, that this was the only safe place in the world. The woman stopped in front of the gate and looked at Teodoro with tired but firm eyes. There was no fear in that look. There was need, and there was a huge difference between the two. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice low and hoarse as if she had walked too long in the sun. "Are you the owner of this place?" Teodoro looked her up and down, not with malice, but with the air of someone who has learned to distrust the world. "I am. I heard you need help. Someone in town mentioned that you take care of everything on your own. The house, the children, the cattle." He didn't answer. He stood there holding the hammer in his right hand, waiting for the rest. "My name is Aparecida. This is my daughter, Leah." She adjusted the little girl in her lap with a gesture so natural it seemed like breathing. "I came from far away. I have no home. I have no family. I have nowhere to go." Silence. "If you let me stay, I'll take care of you." The sentence hung in the air like smoke from a bonfire. Teodoro looked at her, then at the sleeping child, then at the empty road behind her. There was no car waiting. There was no one with her. She had come on foot, alone with everything she owned in life hanging on her shoulder. "You don't know me," he said, without harshness, but without openness either. "You know nothing about my life." "I know you're alone," she replied without looking away. "And so am I. Sometimes that's enough to start." He almost said no. Almost. The no was already formed in his mouth, ready to come out, solid as a rock. But something in the way she held her daughter, with that mixture of strength and desperation that only a mother with nothing in the world knows, made the words stick in his throat. "There's a storage room in the back," he said, turning his face away so as not to appear to be giving in. "It needs cleaning. There are rats." Aparecida didn't smile. She simply said, "Thank you," and he went in. That first night, Teodoro sat on the porch late into the night, listening to the noises coming from the back room. Light footsteps, the dragging of a broom, a low murmur that must have been a lullaby. It had been a long time since that house had heard the sounds of a woman, and he felt, like someone who feels a pang in their chest without knowing if it's illness or longing, that something had changed. But he didn't trust him. In the first few days, Aparecida worked in silence. She would wake up before Teodoro, which in itself was quite an achievement, and when he came down to the kitchen, the coffee was already brewed and the stove lit. She didn't speak while he ate. She would turn her back, washing dishes, tidying things, always busy, always discreet, as if she were trying to occupy as little space as possible in that world that wasn't hers. The little girl, Leah, sat on the kitchen floor with a wooden spoon and a tin pot, banging them together as if playing an instrument only she could hear. Every now and then, she would look at Teodoro with those enormous eyes of a child who hadn't yet learned to be afraid and smile. He would look away, not because I didn't like children, because the smiles of small children reminded him of things he didn't want to remember. David and Lucas looked at Aparecida with the same distrust as their father. David, the older one, didn't speak to her. He ate what she put on the table, but didn't thank her, didn't look at her, didn't ask for anything. It was as if she were invisible. Lucas, younger and more oblivious to the pain, was the first to give in. On the third day, he approached Leah on the kitchen floor and sat beside her, picked up a pot, and began to bang it as well. Aparecida saw from afar and said nothing. She just continued chopping onions, her eyes shining in a way that could have been the onions. Or not. Teodoro watched everything out of the corner of his eye. He didn't want her to stay, but I didn't have the heart to send her away. Because the house, for the first time in 2 years, was clean, the food tasted good, the boys' clothes were washed and folded, and there were flowers, tiny flowers plucked from the bush, in a glass on the kitchen table. No one had put flowers on that table since Madalena, and that's what almost made him send her away. One night, after the boys had gone to sleep, Teodoro went out onto the veranda and found Aparecida sitting on the steps, with Leah asleep in her lap. The night was cold, full of stars, and the silence of the countryside was the kind that seems to carry weight. "You don't need to stay out here in the cold," he said, without looking at her. "I like the night," she replied. "It's the only time when the world stops demanding things." "I'm not going to treat you like a wife," he said suddenly, his voice harsh. "That's not what's happening here." "I know," she said, without taking offense. "I didn't come looking for a husband. I came looking for a roof over my head." He nodded silently and went inside. The days went by, and Aparecida became part of the machinery of that life, like someone joining a dance without making a sound. She asked for nothing. She didn't complain. She didn't cry in front of anyone. She worked from before sunrise and only stopped when the last pot was washed and the last child was asleep. And she was good at it, not in the flashy way of someone trying to impress, in the quiet way of someone who learned to be useful in order to survive. Teodoro, without admitting it, had become dependent on her. He noticed when he returned from the pasture and the smell of food wafted from the house like an anticipatory embrace. He noticed when the boys left for school with their shirts ironed and their hair combed. He noticed when he found the cupboards organized, the tools clean, the yard swept. And he noticed, above all, that the boys were laughing again. But Teodoro was a man who confused gratitude with weakness, and the more he felt that Aparecida made a difference, the more he closed himself off, the harder he became, the shorter his responses were. Because making space for someone meant risking losing again, and he no longer had within him the kind of courage that such a loss demanded. Aparecida felt it. She perceived every cut-off word, every averted glance, every silence that spoke louder than any sentence. But she didn't back down, not because she was strong, because she had no choice. There was no other place in the world that awaited her. And when you have nowhere to go, you learn to stay where you can, even when what's possible hurts. She had her own story, and she carried that story on her body like someone carrying a scar covered by clothing. Aparecida was born in a small town, the youngest of 4 children of an alcoholic bricklayer and a washerwoman who died young from overwork. She grew up ironing clothes for others, cleaning the homes of wealthy families, hearing from her employers that she should be grateful for having a job. You never finished school, she never had a new dress, she never heard anyone say she was beautiful until a man did. His name doesn't matter. What matters is what he did. He said he loved her. He said they were going to live together. He said life was going to be different. She believed him because she needed to believe. Because when you live your whole life without hearing anything good, the first nice word that comes along becomes gospel. When she became pregnant, he disappeared. Not gradually, like someone slowly drifting away, all at once, as if he had never existed. She searched, sent messages, waited. Nothing. The man vanished as easily as he had appeared, and Aparecida was left alone with a growing belly, without a job, without a home, without family. Her brothers didn't want to help. They said it was her fault, that she had gone after the wrong man, that now she had to fend for herself. And she did fend for herself, in whatever way she could. She slept in a shelter, worked in a restaurant kitchen until her 8th month of pregnancy, gave birth to her daughter in a public maternity ward where she screamed alone because there was no one to hold her hand. And then it continued, because a mother doesn't have the right to stop. In the first few months with Leah in her arms, Aparecida slept on bus station benches, in guest house rooms that charged by the hour, and at the home of an evangelical woman who took her in for 3 weeks, and then asked her to leave because the neighbors were talking. The neighbors were always talking. The world is full of mouths that talk and doors that close, and Aparecida knew every single one of them. She worked in a bakery, waking up at 3 in the morning to knead pasta while Leah slept in a crate lined with blankets in the back of the establishment. The bakery owner was a fat man with floury hands who paid little and complained a lot, and when he found out she breastfed during breaks, he said she couldn't have a child there and fired her. She worked in a laundromat, in a family home, in a roadside restaurant where truck drivers looked at her in a way that made their stomachs churn with disgust. She left each place before the look turned into a hand, before the suggestion turned into action, because Aparecida had little, but she had something that no one could take away. The perception of when the situation was going to turn, and the courage to leave before it did. There was one night, in a city whose name she preferred not to remember, when she sat at an empty bus stop at 2 in the morning, with Leah asleep in her lap and nowhere to go. Her last employer had said she no longer wanted a maid with a baby, and the room she rented had to be returned by the end of the week. Aparecida looked at the empty street, at the streetlights buzzing like tired insects, and for the first time thought about giving up. Not on life, on trying. Because trying hurt more than simply existing. Trying meant believing that tomorrow could be different, and when tomorrow arrived the same, the fall was deeper. But Leah stirred in her lap. She made that dreamy baby sound, that soft murmur that sounds like a wordless question. Until someone, in a roadside shop, mentioned that there was a widowed farmer who lived alone with 2 boys, and that the farm was falling apart. And she walked over there, not out of courage, out of lack of choice, which sometimes is the same thing. On the farm, weeks turned into months, and the months drew a routine that wasn't pretty, but it was real. Aparecida took care of everything, the house, the boys, the food, the yard. She fixed the chicken coop fence with wire she found lying around. She planted a small vegetable garden in the back. She taught Lucas how to tie his shoes. She helped Davy with his homework, even though her own handwriting was crooked and full of mistakes. And Leah grew. She grew the way children grow in simple places, on the ground, in the earth, in the sun. She chased after the chickens with her little arms outstretched, laughed at something, slept wherever sleepiness took her. Lucas clung to her as if she were a sister he didn't know he needed. They played together in the yard, built mud castles, shared pieces of bread and butter, and David, even pretending not to care, sometimes sat near them and watched, with that look of a child who wants to participate but is afraid of getting hurt again. Teodoro saw everything. He saw and said nothing, because to say would be to acknowledge, and to acknowledge would be to feel, and feeling was the thing he feared most in the world. But there were times when he couldn't help it. Like the night Lucas woke up with a high fever, shivering under the covers, and Aparecida stayed by his bedside all night, wiping his forehead with damp cloths, softly singing a song that had no lyrics, just a melody, repeated and gentle like the sound of a river. Teodoro stood in the doorway, watching, and felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. He felt he wasn't alone, and that scared him more than loneliness. The next day, he was tougher than ever. He spoke little. He worked too much. He refused the dinner she had prepared. Aparecida didn't react. She simply collected the plate, covered the pan, and went to her room. And that night, for the first time since she arrived, she cried. Not for Teodoro, for herself, for everything she had endured, for all the doors that had closed, for all the times she had been invisible, for all the times she had given her best and received in return silence, contempt, or abandonment. Leah slept beside her, small and warm like a promise, and Aparecida wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and said to herself softly, "Tomorrow I'll get up again." And he stood up. The town began to talk, as small towns always do when someone dares to live in a way that doesn't fit into the judgment of others. Dona Gertrudes was the first. She spread the word that Teodoro had brought a woman into the house, that she must be one of those who just show up, that a decent young woman wouldn't knock on a widower's door offering services. The word spread from mouth to mouth, gaining venom with each repetition, until they reached the boys' school. David returned home one day with a red eye and a clenched fist. He didn't say anything at dinner. He didn't want to eat. When Aparecida asked if everything was all right, he angrily replied, "Why are you here? You're not my mother." The phrase hit Aparecida in the chest like a slap. She stood in the kitchen, plate in hand, breathing slowly. She didn't answer. She didn't cry. She simply said, in a voice so soft it was almost inaudible, "I know I'm not. And I'm not trying to be." David looked at her for a second, and in that second, something broke and something opened at the same time. He ran to the room, and Aparecida stood there, her heart racing and her face calm, like someone who had been hit so many times that she had learned to bleed inside without letting a drop fall. Teodoro heard everything from the balcony. He heard his son's words. You heard her response. And you felt ashamed, not of David, who was a child and repeated what he heard, but of yourself. Because he, too, had never told Aparecida that she mattered. He had also never acknowledged her. He had also treated her as someone who was there by chance, as if her presence were a favor and not a blessing. But he said nothing. Because men like Teodoro have learned to keep everything in the same place where they keep their pain, in a dark corner of their chest, locked away, where no one can see. The following Sunday, Dona Gertrudes appeared at the farm under the pretext of bringing a cake. But the cake was just a pretext. She wanted to see for herself. She wanted to confirm what she had been saying. She found Aparecida in the yard, hanging clothes on the line with Leah playing on the ground beside her. "So it's you," said Gertrude, with a smile that wasn't a smile. "The girl who moved here." "Yes, ma'am." Gertrude looked at Leah, then at the clothes on the line, then at the vegetable garden in the back, and shook her head. "Be careful, girl. A widower with a child is trouble, especially one like that, who doesn't talk, doesn't laugh, doesn't say thank you." Aparecida continued hanging up the laundry. "He doesn't need to thank me. He needs help." Gertrude pursed her lips, not expecting that answer. She was used to people who shrink back, who apologize, who explain themselves. Aparecida did none of that. He remained on the clothesline, his hands steady and his gaze fixed, and Gertrude left without getting what she had come for. But the gossip didn't stop. It got worse. In town, they were already saying that Aparecida was a gold digger, that she had her eye on the farm, that she had orchestrated everything to settle there. And Teodoro heard it. He heard it from the other farmers in the cooperative. He heard it between the lines from the corner store owner. He heard it in the looks of pity and disapproval that fell upon him like a fine, constant rain. And instead of defending Aparecida, he remained silent. Because defending her would mean admitting that she was important, and admitting that was a step he wasn't ready to take. Aparecida knew. She knew the city was talking. She knew Teodoro was listening but saying nothing. And that hurt in a particular way. Because it wasn't just contempt, it was the loneliness of being defended by no one. Of existing in a space where her presence was necessary, but her dignity was optional. She thought about leaving more than once. She thought about picking Leah up in her arms, the bag on her shoulder, and following the same road she had come by. But where to? The world was vast, but there was no corner left for her. And the boys, those two boys who were starting to laugh again, needed someone, even if that someone was invisible. So it stayed that way. He stayed and continued doing what he always did, the invisible work of holding up the world without anyone noticing. Winter arrived, and with it the cold that seeps through the cracks of the old house and gnaws at the bones of those who don't have enough blankets. Aparecida sewed together scraps of fabric to make quilts for the boys. She covered the floor of Leah's room with cardboard and thick cloth. Every day she made thick soup, the kind that warms you from the inside, with potatoes, cassava, beef bones, and a smell that spreads through the house and says, without words, that someone cares. It was that winter that David fell ill. It wasn't a common fever, it was pneumonia. The boy started coughing on a Friday, and by Monday he couldn't breathe properly anymore. Teodoro panicked silently, the kind that doesn't scream but trembles inside. He picked up the boy and took him to the city hospital, which was a 40-minute drive away on a bad road. Aparecida stayed home with Lucas and Leah, but she didn't stay idle. She made tea. She picked out clean clothes for the boy. She put hot water in the thermos. She made sandwiches for Teodoro. And when he called from the hospital saying that Davi would need to be admitted, she simply said, "I'll take care of everything here. Everything will be all right." In the days that followed, Aparecida kept the farm afloat on her own. She would wake up before 4 to milk the 2 cows that Teodoro owned. She fed the cattle, let the chickens out, and checked the fence of the upper pasture, which had a loose post. All this with Lucas behind her like a small, silent shadow, and Leah tied to his back with a cloth, just as her mother had done when she was a child. Lucas missed his brother and father. At night, he didn't want to sleep. He would lie awake in bed staring at the ceiling, and Aparecida would sit beside him and tell him stories she made up on the spot. Stories of wild animals that did human things, of frogs that sang serenades, and of jaguars that were afraid of the dark. Lucas listened with wide eyes and slowly closed them, and when he finally fell asleep, Aparecida felt the weight of the whole day in her arms, and went to her own room with aching feet and a stiff back, but with the certainty that she had done what needed to be done. On Wednesday, it rained heavily. The kind of rain that turns a dirt road into a river and makes the cattle huddle under the trees with that bovine look of resignation. Aparecida saw that water was coming in through the chicken coop roof and ran out in the rain with a piece of tarp she found in the shed. She climbed onto the roof, something she had never done in her life, and nailed the tarp down with crooked nails and a hammer that was too heavy for her hands. She came down soaked, shivering with cold, with a cut on the palm of her hand that bled mixed with rainwater. He cleaned the cut with alcohol without wincing. He bandaged it with a clean piece of cloth and went to prepare dinner. When Teodoro called that night to give her news, she said everything was fine. She didn't mention the rain, the roof, or the cut on her hand, because telling them would worry him, and he already had enough to worry about. Teodoro hung up the phone and stood in the hospital corridor, cell phone in hand, a lump in his throat that wasn't just from worry about his son. It was something else. It was the belated and inevitable realization that this woman he had never thanked, whom he had never looked kindly in the eye, whom he treated like a maid, and not even properly like one, was the only person in the world who cared about him and his children. Davi spent 5 days in the hospital. Teodoro slept in the chair next to the bed, barely eating, without changing his clothes, with the constant fear of someone who has already lost someone and knows that life doesn't ask permission to take them away again. When he returned home with David in his arms, thin, pale, but breathing, he found the house tidy, the food ready, the blankets spread out in the sun, and Aparecida at the door, holding Lucas's hand and Leah in her lap, looking at them with eyes that asked for nothing. They only waited. Teodoro got out of the truck with his son, went inside the house, laid Davi on the bed, and carefully covered him. And when he returned to the kitchen, he found Aparecida heating up soup for him. She placed the plate on the table without saying anything. He sat down. He looked at the soup. He looked at her, and he said in a hoarse, broken voice, as if speaking for the first time in years, "Thank you." It was just one word, a single word. But Aparecida felt as if someone had finally turned on the light in a room where she had lived in darkness for years. She didn't smile. She just nodded, her eyes shining, and went back to the sink. That night, Teodoro stayed awake, staring at the bedroom ceiling, listening to the noises of the house, the creaking of the wood, the wind in the roof tiles, the breathing of the boys in the next room, and further away, the low murmur of Aparecida singing to Leah to help her fall asleep. And he thought of Madalena. He thought of the day he met her, of their simple wedding under the mango tree, of their children being born, of the happy nights, of the goodbye that came too soon. And he thought that perhaps Madalena wouldn't want him to live like this. Perhaps she would look at him from where she was and say, "You need to live, Teodoro. You need to let someone in." But he didn't know how. He had forgotten. The pain had erased the way back, and he was lost in the darkness of himself, groping for food on walls that had no doors. Another month passed. David recovered, and something in him changed. Not all at once, but slowly, like a seed sprouting without haste. He began to talk to Aparecida. Not much. A question here, a thank you there. But it was more than before. And one night, after dinner, he sat at the table while she washed the dishes and said, "Sita, can you help me with my math homework?" She turned slowly, her hands wet and her face surprised. "I can, but I'm not very good with numbers." "That's fine," said David, opening his notebook. "We'll learn together." And there they were, the two of them, hunched over the notebook, their heads almost resting on it, trying to solve a division problem while Leah slept in Lucas's lap on the old living room sofa. Teodoro entered through the kitchen door, covered in dirt, and stopped when he saw the scene. He said nothing, but he stood there looking for a while, motionless like a statue, as if he were seeing something that no longer existed and was now there again, a family. He took off his boots at the door. He washed his hands in the sink, and he sat down at the end of the table, silently near them. Aparecida glanced sideways. She said nothing, but she felt it. She felt that this man, as hard as a tree trunk, was beginning to crack, and that from those cracks, something new could be born. Spring arrived, and with it, life did what it always does. It pushed things forward, whether they wanted it to or not. The farm was better, not by miracle, by hard work. Aparecida had helped organize the accounts, even without knowing how to read properly. She separated the bills by size and color, and Teodoro did the rest. Together, without realizing it, they had created a system, a way of functioning that didn't need words, only presence. But the city doesn't forgive those who are happy without asking permission. And it was Berenice, the sister-in-law, who brought the storm. She appeared one Sunday afternoon, unannounced, driving a borrowed car, and with the expression of someone who comes to save someone who didn't ask for saving. She entered the farm as if she still owned the place, looked around with inspecting eyes, and when she saw Aparecida in the kitchen, she stopped. "Who is that?" Teodoro, who was in the room, stood up slowly. "It's Aparecida. She helps out around the house." "Help." Berenice repeated the word as if it were poison. "Is that what they're calling for now?" "Berenice? Don't give me that Berenice nonsense. My sister died 2 years ago, and you've already brought another one into the house, with her children still here." Teodoro felt his blood boil. But he held back. He always held back. "She takes care of the boys. She takes care of the house. It's not what you're thinking." "I'm not thinking anything. I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is a stranger living in my sister's house, taking care of my sister's children, using my sister's things." Aparecida appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was wearing an apron with flour in her hands, and looked at Berenice with that calmness that those who have suffered much learn to use as a shield. "I'm not using anything belonging to your sister," Aparecida said firmly. "I brought my clothes, my daughter, and my work. Nothing else." Berenice looked at her with disdain. "And who are you to talk to me? You're nothing here. You're not a wife. You're not a relative. You're nobody." The silence that followed was the kind that precedes a storm. Teodoro opened his mouth to speak, but Aparecida was quicker. "You're right. I'm nobody." Her voice didn't tremble. "But in those months, I was the one who got up at dawn to make coffee for your nephews. I was the one who washed their clothes, who helped with their homework, who stayed up all night when David was sick. I was the one who planted food so they wouldn't go hungry. And I was the one who stayed when everyone else left." She looked at Berenice with dry eyes and her dignity intact. "Including you." Berenice blushed. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. And then she did the only thing people like that do when they have no argument. She turned to Teodoro and said, "You'll have to choose. Either that woman leaves, or I'm never setting foot in here again." Teodoro looked at his sister-in-law. He looked at Aparecida, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't remain silent. "So don't step on it." Berenice's eyes widened. She waited for him to turn back. He didn't. She grabbed her purse, went out the door, and slammed the car gate shut hard enough to scare away the chickens. And she drove away. Aparecida stood in the kitchen doorway, her hands still covered in flour, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples. She wasn't used to being defended. She wasn't used to anyone choosing to side with her. Her whole life, she had been the one left over, the one nobody wanted, the one they sent away without a second thought. Teodoro didn't look at her. He went back to the sofa, sat down, and stared at the wall. but there was something different about his shoulders. Something that had been tense before now seemed loose, as if he had lifted a weight he had been carrying without realizing it. That night, after the children were asleep, the two of them stayed on the porch again. Aparecida sat on the step. Teodoro stood, leaning against the pillar. The sky was clear and the full moon illuminated the pasture with a silvery light that made everything seem more beautiful than it was. "You didn't need to do that," Aparecida said quietly. "Yes, I needed to." "Why?" He took a while to answer. When he spoke, his voice came out slow, as if each word required effort. "Because she was wrong, and I was wrong before her. Before her, I was the one who was wrong." Aparecida looked at him. "Wrong how?" "Not seeing you." He stared at the floor. "You've been here for months, taking care of everything, taking care of me, even though I never asked, and I never said that it matters." "No need to say. You need to." He looked up, and for the first time, he truly looked at her. Not like he looked at the maid, not like he looked at a stranger. He looked at her as one finally sees someone who has always been there. "Yes, you do, because I spent 2 years thinking I didn't deserve anything anymore, that it was all over, that everything good in my life had gone with her. And then you appeared on that road with a daughter in your arms and a bag on your shoulder and asked to stay. And I didn't treat you as I should have. I didn't treat you like a human being. You gave me a roof over my head. The roof isn't everything. For someone who has nothing, it's a lot." He shook his head. "You deserve more than just a roof over your head, Aparecida." It was the first time he had said her full name. Not Cida, as the boys called her, not the girl, as he referred to her when speaking to the neighbors. Aparecida. And the name, spoken in that deep, hoarse voice, sounded like something she had never heard before. Recognition. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She just looked at the moon and said, "You deserve more than loneliness, too." He didn't answer, but he stayed there. He stayed until the dew dampened his shoulders. And that night, for the first time in 2 years, he slept without dreaming of a coffin. The change didn't come all at once. It came slowly, like everything that is true. Teodoro began to talk more. Not much. He would never be a man of many words. But he started greeting Aparecida in the morning. He started complimenting the food. He started asking how her day had been. Small things. Things that seem like nothing to someone who has always had them, but that mean the world to someone who never has. Aparecida, in turn, began to allow herself to exist in that house in a different way. She put a painting she found in the trash on the kitchen wall. She made curtains from scraps of fabric. She taught Lucas to sing a silly song she used to sing when she was a child. And when Davi asked her to watch the soccer game with him on the old TV in the living room, she sat next to him and cheered for the wrong team just to hear him complain and laugh at the same time. One afternoon, Aparecida found, at the back of a closet she was organizing, a shoebox full of photographs. Photos of Madalena, young Madalena in a flowery dress, laughing at the camera. Madalena with Teodoro on their wedding day, the two of them under a mango tree. She in simple white and he with a look of disbelief at his own good fortune. Pregnant Madalena, with her hands on her belly and that glow that pregnant women have, as if they carried the sun inside. Madeline with baby Davi, Madalena with Lucas in her arms. Aparecida looked at each photo carefully, without jealousy, without pain, with respect. Because that woman in the photos had been truly loved, had built something real, and had left behind people who still missed her every day. And Aparecida didn't want to erase that. She didn't want to replace her. She simply wanted to exist alongside her, like a new tree growing near an old trunk, without competing for its shade. She cleaned the box, arranged the photos in order, and placed 3 of them in picture frames she had bought at the town's thrift store with the little money she had saved from the change Teodoro sometimes left on the kitchen table. She put 1 picture frame in the living room, 1 in the boys' room, and 1 on the kitchen shelf. When Teodoro saw it that night, he stopped in front of the photo in the living room, Madalena smiling with her hair loose, and stood there for so long that Aparecida thought she'd done something wrong. "If you don't want it, I'll take it down," she said from the doorway. He shook his head without taking his eyes off the photo. "No, you can keep it," he paused. "It's been a long time since I looked at it. I kept the photos because it hurt to see them, but now..." He didn't finish the sentence. He just ran his fingers slowly along the frame and went out onto the balcony. But Aparecida understood what he didn't say. That now looking hurt less, that the longing was still there, but it had changed form. It was no longer that sharp blade that cut from within. It was more like a fine rain that wets but doesn't drown, and that this, in some way, was because of her. Leah grew like a healthy weed, wild and beautiful. She already spoke a few words, ran around the yard with the chickens, and had learned to call Lucas Luca and Davi Dabi, and the two of them thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And when she called Teodoro Teo for the first time, stretching out her little arms, asking to be held, the man stood still, looking at that child who wasn't his, who didn't share his blood, who owed him nothing, and felt something break inside his chest. Not from pain, from something else, from something he had forgotten existed. He picked Leah up in his arms. She rested her head on his shoulder and remained quiet, as if this were the most natural place in the world. And perhaps it was. Aparecida watched from afar, from the kitchen doorway, and leaned her head against the doorframe, her eyes filled with tears and her heart overflowing with something she couldn't name. Because it was the first time someone had held her daughter with such affection. The first time Leah had something resembling a father. And the first time Aparecida felt that perhaps, just perhaps, that place could be home. Summer arrived with a vengeance, bringing heavy rain and humid heat that clung to the skin. The farm was a handful: fallen fences, sick calves, flooded pastures. Teodoro worked from sunrise to sunset, and now, sometimes, Aparecida went with him, not because he asked, because she saw that he needed it. She held wire while he hammered. She brought water for the cattle when the trough ran dry. She helped pull out calves stuck in the mud, and she did it all in flip-flops and left without complaining, with the same naturalness of someone born knowing that life is work, and work is life. There was a day when the youngest calf, a brown creature with enormous eyes that Lucas had named Chocolate, fell ill. It wouldn't eat, wouldn't get up, and lay in the pasture with shortness of breath and a hot snout. Teodoro thought he was going to lose the animal. He called the city veterinarian, who charged a lot and took a long time, and while he waited, he stayed by the calf's side with the helplessness of someone who knows that no amount of effort is ever enough. Aparecida arrived with a basin of warm water and clean cloths. She sat beside the calf, without asking permission, and began to apply compresses to the animal's body, speaking softly, in that voice she used to calm Leah when she cried at night. Teodoro looked at her, kneeling in the mud, her skirt dirty and her face sweaty, caring for a sick calf as if it were the most important thing in the world. "You don't need to do that," he said. "I know," she replied without pausing. "But Lucas loves that calf, and Lucas has already lost too much." Teodoro said nothing, but he felt it. He sensed that this woman understood things he had never been able to put into words, that she saw the boys not only with her eyes, but with that other kind of vision that mothers have, the vision that perceives pain before the pain appears, that feels loss before the loss takes shape. The calf got better. The veterinarian arrived, gave it an injection, and said that the compresses had probably helped to bring down the fever. When Lucas heard this, he hugged the calf around the neck and then ran to hug Aparecida, and she laughed with that low laugh she had, that laugh that always seemed to be apologizing for existing. Teodoro saw that embrace and thought of Madalena. He thought of the way she also laughed softly, as if joy were too fragile to expose to the world, and he realized, with the frightening clarity that sometimes comes without warning, that he wasn't replacing Madalena. He was honoring what she had built. He was allowing love to continue existing in that house, even if in a different form, even with different people. Because love, when it's true, doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to the place. It belongs to the walls. It belongs to the floor that was trodden by bare feet, and to the ceiling that heard children's laughter. And when someone leaves, love doesn't go with them. It stays, waiting, until someone new has the courage to harvest it. The neighbors stopped talking. Not because they had changed their minds, because reality was more stubborn than gossip. Teodoro's farm was visibly better. The cattle were fattening. The house was painted. The boys were doing well in school. And that man, who 2 years ago seemed like a ghost of his former self, now walked with straight shoulders and his head held high. And Aparecida was different too, no longer thin, no longer hunched over. She had color in her face, flesh on her arms, and a way of walking that was different. It wasn't pride, it was firmness. The firmness of someone who finally stands on ground that doesn't move. But the human heart is complicated, and Teodoro's even more so, because he felt it. He felt something growing inside him that went far beyond gratitude, something he recognized from the past, but which was now different, more mature, calmer, more aware. He looked at Aparecida and saw things he hadn't seen before, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, the way she hummed while cooking, the way she looked at the boys with a tenderness that can't be learned, it's something you're born with. And he was afraid. Afraid that feeling this way would be a betrayal of Madalena. Afraid that Aparecida wouldn't feel the same. Afraid that if he opened his mouth, everything would fall apart. Because his life had already fallen apart once, and he didn't know if he could handle it again. Aparecida felt it too, but her fear was different. Fear of confusing kindness with love, fear of creating expectations, fear of believing in something beautiful and being abandoned again. Because every time she believed, the world pulled the rug out from under her. And she couldn't afford to fall again, not with Leah in her arms. And so the two lived, so close and yet so far at the same time, sharing the same roof, the same table, the same routine, but separated by a silence made of fear disguised as prudence, until life decided for them. It was a December night, Christmas Eve. Aparecida had prepared a simple supper: rice with raisins, roast chicken, farofa with eggs, cornbread. Nothing grand, but it was more than that house had seen in the last 2 Christmases, which Teodoro had spent alone with the boys, eating bread with mortadella and pretending it wasn't a holiday. The boys were excited. Lucas ran around the house asking if Santa Claus was coming, and Davi, even knowing the truth, pretended yes so as not to spoil his brother's joy. Leah, wearing a little dress that Aparecida had sewn from a white scrap of fabric, clapped her hands for no reason, caught up in the energy of others. Aparecida carefully set the table. She placed a clean cloth, plates that had been combined one day, different glasses that looked the same under the yellowish light of the lamp, and in the center, a pine branch that she had cut in the woods and decorated with string ribbons. When Teodoro saw the table, he stopped at the door. He said nothing, but his eyes took in every detail: the plates, the glasses, the decorated branch, the children sitting and waiting, and Aparecida, standing beside the table with her apron still tied and a shy smile she offered, as if offering the last thing she had. "Merry Christmas," she said. He swallowed hard. "Merry Christmas." They sat down. They ate. The children talked loudly, laughed, spilled juice, fought over the biggest piece of chicken. It was noisy, it was chaotic, it was life. And at some point during that simple supper, under that dim light, with the smell of roast chicken and the sound of children laughing, Teodoro looked at Aparecida and she looked at him. And in that look was everything they had never said. All the fear, all the gratitude, all the loneliness, all the hope. Everything they had carried alone, and which now in that instant seemed lighter because it was shared. Lucas, not understanding what was happening between the adults, tugged at Aparecida's sleeve and said, "Sita, will Santa Claus bring presents next year?" She looked at him and smoothed the boy's hair with her hand. "Yes, bring it." "How do you know?" "Because we're going to ask for it very strongly. But I've already ordered a lot of things and nothing has ever arrived." Aparecida looked at Lucas with that way she had of effortlessly transforming any moment into something important. Sometimes Santa Claus is late. Sometimes he sends the wrong thing. And sometimes... She paused, glancing sideways at Teodoro. "Sometimes the present arrives on foot on a Friday afternoon, and we don't even realize it's a present." Lucas didn't understand. 5-year-olds don't understand metaphors. But Teodoro did, and he felt his heart beat in a way it hadn't in a long time. Not racing, not desperately, but strongly, like the heart of someone who is alive and finally realizes they are alive. Neither of them smiled, neither of them looked away. They stood there, locked in that gaze, for a second that lasted longer than any second should have lasted. After dinner, when the children fell asleep on the sofa in a pile of intertwined arms and legs, Lucas hugging Leah, Davy stretched out with one arm hanging off the edge, Teodoro and Aparecida stayed in the kitchen, washing dishes side by side. She washed, he dried. They didn't speak, but they were close, closer than ever, their elbows almost touching, the steam from the hot water rising between them like a thin curtain. And then his hand touched hers, not on purpose, or maybe it did. He picked up a plate, and their fingers met on the wet edge, and neither of them pulled away. Aparecida stopped washing. She kept her hands in the water, feeling his touch as if it were the first time anyone had touched her. And in a way, it was, because no touch before had been like this, gentle, unhurried, without hidden intentions, just presence. Teodoro looked at her. "Aparecida, try? I don't know how to do this right. I've lost the knack for feeling, but I need to tell you something." She waited, her heart in her throat. "I don't want you to leave, not because of the food or the house or the boys." He paused, as if gathering courage he hadn't had in years. "Because of you. I don't want you to go because I need you, not as a helper, as... He couldn't finish. The word got stuck, too big for the throat of a man who had spent 2 years in silence. Aparecida took her hands out of the water. She dried them on her apron, and she did something neither of them expected. She took his hand and placed it against her own face, pressing her rough, calloused palm against her tear-wet cheek. "I know," she said. "Me too." He stood still, feeling her skin against his hand, feeling the warmth, feeling the tear, feeling everything he had refused to feel for fear that feeling would be the same as losing. But it wasn't. Feeling was the same as finding. They didn't kiss that night. They didn't need to. What happened was bigger than a kiss. It was a silent pact, made with hands touching and eyes open, between two people who had been broken by the world and who now, together, were whole. Not perfect. Whole. The new year arrived, and Teodoro did something no one expected. He took Aparecida and the 3 children to Mass in the city. They entered the church together, he in a clean shirt, she in a simple dress, Leah in her arms, Davy and Lucas holding hands. People stared, some with surprise, others with disapproval. Dona Gertrudes almost choked on the host, but Teodoro walked with his head held high, and when the priest asked everyone to hold hands for prayer, he extended his hand to Aparecida, and she took it, in front of everyone, without shame, without fear, with the naturalness of someone who knows that what is true needs no permission. After Mass, old So Ernesto, who was a neighbor on the farm and one of the few who had never spoken ill of anyone, approached Teodoro and said in the gentle voice of someone who had seen a lot of life go by, "Your Madalena would be happy, Teodoro. She would never want to see you alone." Teodoro felt a lump in his throat. He shook the old man's hand and simply said, "Thank you, Mr. Ernesto." And in that thank you there was more than just gratitude for a phrase. There was the permission he needed, the permission to move forward. The following months were the most beautiful that farm had ever seen. Not because everything was easy. It still rained heavily, the cattle still required work, and money was still tight. But there was something different in the air, something that changed the color of everything without moving anything. Teodoro began to fix up the house, not the usual patchwork repairs, real repairs. He replaced the roof of the back room. He painted the walls. He made a new window for Aparecida and Leah's room, and when he finished, he stood looking at the open window, with the patchwork curtains swaying in the wind, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not for himself, for what they were building together. Aparecida planted a garden in front of the house. Daisies, carnations, jasmine. Flowers that didn't bring in money and served no purpose other than to remind him that beauty exists even where no one expects it. And every day, when Teodoro returned from the pasture, he saw the flowers and saw Aparecida watering them, and he thought that this woman had the gift of making life sprout in any soil, including his own. Davy began calling Aparecida Cida with such naturalness that no one noticed when it started. It was as if it had always been that way. And one day, returning from school, he brought a drawing he had made in art class. It was 5 stick figures under a house with a red roof. Below, in crooked letters, it was written, "My family." And the 5 figures had names: Dad, Cida, Davy, Lucas, Leah. Aparecida held that piece of paper as if it were the most valuable thing in the world, because it was. It was proof that she existed, that she was seen, that she belonged somewhere. After a lifetime of being nobody, an 8-year-old boy had drawn her within a family, and that was worth more than any words any adult could say. She hung the drawing on the kitchen wall next to the painting she had found in the trash, and every time she looked at it, she felt it was all worth it. Everything. The whole journey, all the hunger, all the loneliness, all the contempt. Everything had been worth it to get there. One late afternoon in March, when the sun was low and golden and the world seemed painted in oils, Teodoro called Aparecida to the veranda. She came, drying her hands on the dish towel, and sat beside him on the bench he had repaired the previous week. The children were playing in the yard. Lucas chased Leah, who laughed with that high-pitched, childlike laugh that seemed made of crystal. David was sitting under the mango tree, reading a book that the teacher had lent him. Teodoro remained silent for a while, looking at the 3 of them. Then he looked at Aparecida. "I want to ask you something," he said. "What?" "I know I was hard on you. I know you came here with nothing, and I gave almost nothing in return. I know you endured things you shouldn't have. Gossip, disdain, silence, my silence, which was the worst of all." Aparecida listened without interrupting. She had learned that Teodoro spoke in his own time, and that interrupting was like closing a door that had taken him a lifetime to open. "I'm not good with words. I never have been. But I know how I feel. And what I feel is that this house is yours. That these boys are yours as much as they are mine. That Leah is my daughter as much as she is yours." He took a deep breath. "And that I want to stay by your side. Not because I need help, because I want you. You, Aparecida. All of you." She looked at him with eyes that overflowed, but not with sadness. With something else. With something she had given up searching for. Something that had come to her along a dirt road, disguised as an old farm and a silent man. "I always wanted to stay," she said. "From day one. I said I'd take care of you, but the truth is you took care of me. You gave me a place, you gave me a name, you gave me a reason to get up in the morning that wasn't just to survive." Teodoro extended his hand. Aparecida took it, and they stood there hand in hand on the porch of the house that now belonged to both of them, watching the children play in the yard while the sun slowly set and painted the sky with colors that have no name in any language. There was no marriage proposal with a ring and kneeling. There was no party. There were no invitations. There was, the following Saturday, a trip to the city's registry office where Teodoro and Aparecida signed papers before a justice of the peace who was sneezing from allergies and a secretary who barely looked at them. The children were present, Davy in a borrowed dress shirt, Lucas in tight shoes, Leah with a ribbon in her hair. And so Ernesto, who had been invited as a witness, cried more than all of them put together. On his way out, Teodoro bought ice cream for the children and a bouquet of daisies for Aparecida. Not because he was being romantic, because they were the flowers she had planted in the garden. Flowers that reminded him that beautiful things can grow from any soil as long as someone takes care of them. That night, back at the farm, the children went to bed early, exhausted from ice cream and excitement. Teodoro and Aparecida stayed on the porch, as always. The bench for two. The sky full of stars. The silence of the countryside that isn't silence. It's a conversation that only those who listen with their whole heart can hear. "I never thought I'd have this," said Aparecida, resting her head on his shoulder. "To have what? Someone, a place, a table with food and people around it, a backyard, flowers." He put his arm around her. "Me neither." "Would Madalena like me?" The question came gently, without fear, with the sincere curiosity of someone who wants to get to know someone who has already passed away. Teodoro thought. He really thought, with the care the question deserved. And then he said, "Yes, I would like it very much. Because you have the same thing she had." "What?" "A way of caring that doesn't make a fuss, that doesn't charge, that doesn't expect anything, it just cares. And when we realize it, everything has already changed." Aparecida closed her eyes. She felt her chest warm, her eyes moist, and that rare and precious sensation of being exactly where she should be. Not because life had planned it that way, but because, after so much walking, after so many closed doors and floors that opened beneath her feet, she had finally found a place where she could land. And there he stayed. The years passed, as they do when life is simple and full. Slow on the outside, fast on the inside. Lucas grew up and resembled his mother, with the same sweet smile and gentle eyes. David grew up serious and strong, like his father, but with a gentleness that was all his own, all new, the fruit of a girl named Leah who taught him unknowingly that loving is not weakness. Leah grew up knowing she had a father who wasn't by blood but by choice. And when someone at school or on the street asked, "Who is your father?" she would answer without hesitation, "Teodoro." Because a father she already knew isn't the one who plants. It's the one who stays. It's the one who waters. It's the one who harvests together. The farm prospered. It didn't become rich, it became respectable. The cattle fattened, the vegetable garden yielded, the milk sold, and there was never a shortage of food on the table again. And, on the porch of the house, now painted white with new windows and patchwork curtains, there was a bench for two that became a bench for five, because the children always wanted to sit there too. There was a day when David, already 11 years old and with the precocious seriousness of someone who matured quickly, arrived home from school and asked to speak with Aparecida alone. They sat under the mango tree, with the sun filtering through the leaves, creating patterns of light on the ground. "Sita," he said, looking at his own hands, "I want to apologize to you." "Why are you sorry, my son?" The expression, "my son," came out naturally, as if he had always been there waiting for the right moment. David looked at her, and Aparecida saw that his eyes were red. "Because of that day. When I said you weren't my mother, I know I hurt you. I saw it in your face." Well, Aparecida felt a tightness in her chest. "You were a child, Davy. The children at school had said things. You were confused." "I know, but it wasn't true. I mean, it was true that you're not my biological mother, but..." He paused, searching for words with the effort of someone learning to say big things. "But a mother is the one who stays, right? A mother is the one who wakes up in the middle of the night when we're sick. A mother is the one who helps with homework. A mother is the one who makes thick soup in the winter and sews clothes and argues with us to brush our teeth." He looked at her. "You stayed. Berenice didn't stay. The neighbors didn't stay. You stayed." Aparecida couldn't hold back. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't mind, because they were the good kind of tears, the kind that washes you clean from the inside out and leaves everything cleaner. She pulled Davy into a hug, and he let her, even though he was just a boy and at the age when boys think hugs are for little kids. They stayed there under the mango tree, embraced while the chickens pecked around, and the world, for a moment, stopped spinning to respect that moment. Later that same year, Aparecida received a letter, a real letter in a brown envelope, delivered by the postman who came to the farm once a week. It was from one of her brothers, the youngest, named Joaquim. He said he had found out where she was, that he missed her, that he regretted not having helped when she needed it, that their mother, before dying, had asked them to take care of each other, and he knew he had failed. He asked for forgiveness. He asked if he could visit. Aparecida read the letter 3 times. The first time, she felt anger. The second time, she felt sadness. The third time, she felt something akin to compassion, that difficult feeling that arises when we understand that people err not out of malice, but out of weakness, and that weakness is the most human thing that exists. She showed the letter to Teodoro. He read it silently, returned it, and asked, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." "You don't need to decide now." "What if I decide to forgive?" "Then I'll tidy up the guest room." She looked at him with a smile that was half laughter, half tears. "We don't have a guest room." "Then I'll make one." And she did. Not a proper room, but she furnished the back shed with an old bed, a new mattress, clean sheets, and a window overlooking the pasture. And when Joachim arrived one Saturday morning, thin and ashamed and too much like Aparecida for her to remain angry, she greeted him at the door with hot coffee and dry eyes. It wasn't a soap opera reunion. There was no dramatic hug or slow-motion tears. There was coffee on the porch, quiet conversation, long silences that spoke louder than words. Joachim met Leah, met the boys, met Teodoro. And when he left, 2 days later, he hugged his sister at the gate and said, "You built something beautiful, Saida." And she replied, "I didn't build it alone. Mrs. Gertrude's moved to another city. Berenice never returned. And the gossip, like all gossip that finds no misery to feed on, died of hunger. And Aparecida?" Aparecida continued to be what she always was, a woman who carried the world in her arms without making a sound, who woke up early, made coffee, watered the flowers, combed children's hair, repaired fences, and cooked beans with the same hand. Who asked for nothing? Who demanded nothing? Who gave everything and thought it was not enough? But now it was different. Now she was seen. Now she was loved. Now she had a name that someone said fondly, a place at the table that was just hers, and a hand that held hers every night on the porch, while the world turned and the stars stayed. One evening, many years later, Teodoro and Aparecida were sitting on that same bench. The children, no longer children, had gone home. The house was quiet. The sun set red over the hills, and the silence was the good kind, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. Aparecida looked at the yard, at the flowers that were still there, stubborn and beautiful like her, and she said, almost to herself, "I arrived on this road with nothing." Teodoro looked at her. "And now?" She smiled. A small smile, the kind that doesn't show up in photos that only those close by see. "Now I have everything." He squeezed her hand. And they stood there in silence as the sun finished setting and night gently arrived, bringing stars and the scent of jasmine from the garden she had planted years ago, when all she had in the world was a daughter in her arms, a bag on her shoulder, and the insane courage to knock on a stranger's door and say, "If you'll let me stay, I'll take care of you." And it stayed that way, and he took care of it, and she was taken care of. And that house, which had smelled of abandonment, began to smell of warm bread, wet earth, morning coffee, clothes on the line, jasmine flowers. Life didn't give them a fairy tale. It gave them something better, a true story, with pain, with fear, with mistakes, with silence, but also with courage, with choice, with perseverance, with that kind of love that isn't declared by shouting but is proven by staying. Every day, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. And if someone were to ask Teodoro what the most important day of his life was, he wouldn't say his wedding to Madalena, nor the birth of his children, nor the day he bought the farm. He would say it was a Friday afternoon, one of those that carry the scent of rain before the rain arrives, when a thin woman appeared on the dirt road with a child in her arms and said 7 words that changed everything. 7 words that he barely heard. 7 words that he almost didn't accept. 7 words that saved 2 adults, 3 children, and an old dark wooden house lost among hills in a piece of land the world had forgotten. "If you let me stay, I'll take care of you." And that was enough. It was enough to change the life of a man who had given up on living. It was enough to give a home to a child who had never had one. It was enough to give childhood back to 2 boys who had forgotten what it was like to laugh. It was enough to prove that love doesn't need to be grand to be true, that sometimes it arrives barefoot in worn-out slippers and with a bag over its shoulder, and knocks on the door without knowing if it will be welcomed or sent away. Aparecida was no book heroine. She had no special powers, no extraordinary beauty, and no above-average intelligence. She was an ordinary woman, with hands calloused from work and a heart scarred by disappointments, who did the only thing she knew how to do: care. Care, unconditionally, without guarantees, without contracts. Care because that was who she was, not what she did, what she was. And Teodoro wasn't a hero either. He was a man who was afraid, who shut himself off, who mistreated through inaction, who took months to understand the obvious and even more months to have the courage to admit it. But who, in the end, did the hardest thing a wounded heart can do. He opened the door again, knowing it might hurt, knowing he might lose, opening it anyway. And perhaps that's what love truly is. Not the pretty part that appears in movies and books, not the kisses in the rain, nor the declarations with violins in the background, but the difficult part, The part that happens in the kitchen at 5 in the morning when it's cold and the coffee needs to be made. The part that happens in the hospital when the child is sick and someone needs to stay. The part that happens in silence when words run out and what remains is presence. The simple, difficult, courageous presence of the one who chose to stay. Aparecida chose to stay. Teodoro chose to leave. And in that mutual choice, made not once, but every day, every morning, every coffee, every dinner, every glance, every outstretched hand, every shared silence, in that choice repeated like a prayer, something was born that neither of them expected, and that both deserved. A life. Not perfect, not easy. But a life with the scent of jasmine, and the taste of hot coffee, and the sound of a child laughing, and the texture of calloused hands holding calloused hands while the sun sets behind the hills, and the world, for a moment, makes sense. Because in the end, when all is said and done, when all the gossip dies down, and all the judgments pass, and all the pain turns into memory, and all the memory turns into strength, what remains is this. Two people who met on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, at the exact point where one's loneliness met the other's, and together they chose not to be alone anymore, and that was enough.